Let's dive into one of the most baffling medical cases ever recorded. We're going back to 1950 to a story that really makes you ask a pretty fundamental question. How do we even know what's real? And what part of us is, well, actually us? It all kicks off with this quote. I mean, just imagine it. A hospital patient, totally lucid, looks a doctor in the eye and makes this absolutely bizarre request. Now, this isn't some line from a strange movie. This was a real, desperate plea from a man whose brain was telling him a story that his own body couldn't argue with. And here it is. This is the only photograph from the original medical thesis. It's a really stark image, you know? It kind of grounds us in that time period and sets the stage for what is basically a medical detective story, one that's going to take us deep inside the architecture of the human mind. So let's meet our patient. He's only known by his initials, JCV. He was a 45-year-old Boilermaker, and he was admitted to a hospital in Argentina on April 20th, 1950. The reason? He just had a massive stroke, but as it turns out, that was really only the beginning of the mystery. The sheer contradiction of his symptoms is what's so mind-bending. Get this. He was completely paralyzed on his left side. That's a condition called a hemiplegia, but he had absolutely no idea. His mind just wouldn't see it. And outside of this huge blind spot, his intellect was sharp. His reasoning was totally sound. He'd have perfectly normal conversations, but then in the next breath insist that his own arm was an animal or a dead snake or some other object that didn't belong to him. And this quote, this really shows you the strange internal logic of his shattered reality. In his mind, he was perfectly fine, totally capable of walking. So the problem couldn't possibly be his paralyzed legs. No, it had to be the footwear. He genuinely believed that if he just had his proper shoes, not these flimsy slippers, he could get right up and walk out of there. It's baffling, but inside his own head, it made perfect sense. Okay, so the doctors watching this quickly realized this wasn't just simple confusion or delirium from the stroke. No, JCV was suffering from a very specific and rare set of neurological conditions. Guys like Gabriel Anton and, most famously, Joseph Babinski had already described it. They were putting a name to the mind's most profound form of denial. So the main condition here is called anosognosia. And let's be clear, this isn't the patient being stubborn or in denial in a psychological sense. They literally, neurologically, lack the ability to be aware of their own problem. You could hold up their paralyzed arm, ask them to move it, and they might say they did, or make up some excuse for why they didn't, all while truly believing nothing is wrong. Then you have this strange cousin to anosognosia, which is called anosodiophoria. In this version, the patient might actually admit, yeah, I guess my arm doesn't move, but they'll say it with the same emotional tone as saying, oh, it looks like it might rain later. There's this total, baffling indifference to what should be a life-changing disability. And then we get to the absolute strangest symptom of them all, hemiasomatogonosia. This is where the brain doesn't just ignore a limb, it actively rejects it. The sense of ownership, that feeling that this is my arm, is just gone. This is where the parrot on the back comes from. The brain is trying to make sense of this limb it can't feel or control, so it comes up with a new story. It must be a foreign object. And this was a crucial point that Babinski himself was really insistent on. This syndrome is not a sign of general insanity or dementia. It's a highly specific, almost laser-focused breakdown in the machinery of self-awareness. The rest of the mind can be working perfectly, which honestly just makes the denial of paralysis all the more shocking. Okay, so to really get how this all can happen, we need to take a step back and look at how a healthy brain works. The original 1950 thesis called it noción corporal, or the notion of the body. Today we usually call it the body schema. Let's break down how it's built. So think of this body schema as a live, constantly updating blueprint of you. It's the brain's internal model of your body, where your arms and legs are, what they're doing, and what belongs to you. You don't have to consciously think about it, of course. It's just running in the background every single second of your life. So how's it built? Well, it's basically a three-step process happening all the time. First, your brain is just constantly taking in sensory data from your eyes, from your skin, and from this kind of hidden sense called proprioception, which is how you know where your limbs are, even with your eyes closed. Second, a specific part of your brain, the parietal lobe, acts like a master chef, taking all these ingredients and mixing them together. The result? Step 3. A seamless, unified body map, a coherent sense of you. So in Anton-Babinski Syndrome, that whole integration process is just shattered. And decades of research, starting with cases exactly like JCV's, have shown us that the damage almost always happens in a very, very specific place. I mean, the consistency here, even in these early cases, is pretty striking. The damage is overwhelmingly in the right hemisphere of the brain, specifically in the areas where the parietal and temporal lobes meet. This is basically the brain's headquarters for integrating our sense of our body and the world. And this, right here, leads to the big mystery that stumped neurologists back in 1950, and honestly, it still fascinates us today. Why the right hemisphere? Why almost always that side? There are a lot of theories. Maybe the right side is more specialized in big picture, spatial awareness, but a single definitive answer, it's still pretty elusive. So what happened to our patient, the Boilermaker JCV? Well, his story isn't just about a brain breaking down. It's also about a brain that slowly, and quite remarkably, began to heal itself. This timeline really shows his gradual return. For more than a month, he lived in this state of complete unawareness. Then, in early June, a little crack appeared. He started to admit he cannot move his arm well. I mean, that's a huge step. By June 10th, the wall came down completely, and he finally recognized his paralysis. His brain was slowly rewriting its own broken map, bringing the left side of his body back into the fold of what he considered self. The incredible case of JCV and others like him, it isn't just some medical oddity. It's really a profound lesson about the very nature of our own consciousness. So, what does this all mean? Well, your sense of being a single, unified self, the feeling that you're in command of your body and aware of it, it feels effortless, doesn't it? It feels like a fundamental truth of the universe. But it's not. It's an illusion. It's a beautiful and incredibly complex story that your brain is actively telling itself every single moment. We even see weird echoes of this in things like phantom limb syndrome, where the brain's map of the body hangs on even after the body part is gone. Which leaves us all with a final, really big question to chew on. We've seen what happens when the storyteller in our head breaks. It can mistake an arm for a parrot. It really makes you wonder, what other subtle stories are our own brains telling us right now, shaping a reality we never ever think to question?